this time, we're ready to begin that junior showmanship with junior division first. Those are 11-year-olds and under. So we're going to bring them on in the ring. Joe and Nancy's going to give you some direction, and our judge, Mike Stitzline from Ohio, will evaluate your showmanship skills. We're happy to announce this year that Seidel Equipment has sponsored an award for the winner of each one of these classes. That's in addition to what the premium book says that we're going to be doing. And then at the end, after we do all three classes, our junior, intermediate, and senior, we will have an overall showman. And Eastern States Expo has donated a belt buckle for the winner of that overall showmanship winner. So we really appreciate all those folks stepping up and providing assistance. We will pick a top 5 in each class. And the book does mention the premiums for those.
In this first class of showmanship, we pulled out 6 out here that I thought were doing an exceptional job. I think the other ones have all done a really nice job, but we're going to put our hands together and excuse those young people around the outside to go back to the pens. Talked about them individually. They've all done a great job, and hopefully they'll come back and do it again. So we'll work through these top 6 out here and put them in a position. Hopefully you'll learn something from coming out. As some of those young people are pretty young and not quite ready to handle some of these bigger sheep. Congratulations. Well, first of all, why don't we give these juniors a nice round of applause for coming out and showmanship. Even the ones that went back to the pen, we sorted some off and worked them a little bit longer here and tried to get some room so we could do some things. As we get out here in our first lineup, I think they're all really good. They've done a great job. Sometimes there's a little disadvantage comparative to their sheep. Even with the young man that we chose to start with, I'm sure that ewe is probably just as heavy or heavier than he is. So sometimes that's a hard thing to work through, getting those sheep set up. He's done an excellent job. I guess for me, he keeps the sheep underneath of itself the way I like to see him. Keeps that top line up. He has that head and neck placement really well up out of the front end of that sheep. Just always has it in the right position. He got a little off there for a little bit. She got a little worked up. He got her right back into position, calmed down, got the ewe back in the position, and stayed with it. I think that's a big key, is don't let your nerves get to you. I think that's a big key in any showmanship or any class, is that when our nerves get the best of us, then the sheep feel it, and then they get out of position too. So he's done an excellent job of keeping that ewe under control. And like I said, keeps her at the right distance, not overstretched, not too far underneath of itself. I think just places them in the right position to make her look at her best. The young lady coming in second, I think really super calm also. Again, super good at handling the sheep. She really knows what she wants to do, very confident about it. Gets out there, gets on the head of that sheep. I like the way she gets the head and neck placement on this sheep, whether she's up or whether she's down. She's always got that head and neck straight up out of the shoulders. I guess for me at times, she would get that sheep just a little long for me, a little more stretched out than I like to see, which would allow that ewe to relax in her top line just ever so slightly. In any breed, I think it's a big important thing is keeping that top line up and level. If we stretch these sheep too far, they get down in their top lines. That doesn't make them look like they're as strong topped to me. When you've got a top line that's down, they may be big topped, but if they're relaxed too much, then it doesn't look as strong from a profile standpoint over at the side of the ring. She just stretches that sheep just ever so slightly, but again, fantastic job on the front end of that sheep. Keeps her really calm, gets her around the ring just with ease, and doesn't have any trouble with that. Young lady coming in here in third, I guess a similar situation, just a little overstretched. That ewe is already plenty straight behind. If you get her stretched out, it makes her look posty. We don't want to show things into the sheep that maybe aren't there. We want to try to correct any problem. That ewe gets a little too straight for me when you set them that far out behind her. And so because of that, she doesn't look as correct as she could out here on the profile. Maybe you got to work just a little bit more trying to get that head and neck up out of the shoulder on her. But again, super good as far as setting them square, that she gets it side by side. She doesn't have them too wide or too narrow. She does do a good job of just being calm and getting that ewe in the right position. Always steps off, gives me that front view when I come down the line. I think that was one of the key things that we saw that a lot of young people just don't know. When you're walking down and you look back, you always want to be face to face with the judge. If you're face to face with the judge, then you know you're in the right position. If you're looking over your shoulder, that means all I can see is your rear end and not the front of the sheep. So that means you're in the wrong position. So you want to always turn so that you're face to face with the judge, and that means you give a good view of the front end of that sheep. When I come down and I look back at the front of that sheep, I want to be able to see that. A young lady coming in here in fourth, I think that's what maybe fall a little bit short for her. She got that sheep just a little long at times, and feet and legs weren't maybe quite as square as what we had in our top three individuals, but very super calm in the way she handles the ewe. She has that head and neck up out of there. She's very comfortable in getting it up out of the shoulders the way it should be. She does a good handle on the head, and it makes that sheep look really good from a profile standpoint. And when you get behind her, I think that's just a little bit off on those rear legs. It's a bigger sheep, hard to reach those back ones. Similar situation what we ran to in the young lady in fifth. That's a big old sheep for anyone to handle, even myself, to try to get her into position. That's a hard challenge to handle. She gets her in as good a position as she can. Main thing is, if you can't get those feet and legs right, always remember, keep the head and neck up out of the shoulders on that sheep. Keep the top line level. Most of us don't realize that it's not necessarily the feet and legs that make a sheep not look as good. It's always keeping the head up and the top line level so the sheep looks good, even if they aren't quite in the correct position. Most of the time when you get the head up in the right position, they'll put their feet and legs very close for you, so you won't have them looking too bad, even if they're off just a bit. As the young man that came out here, and we only have 5, but I kept him. I thought he did a good job of just keeping the head and neck up out of the sheep. Even though that ewe is not always in the best position with her feet and legs, she always looks good as far as body, the front end, the neck set. That's the correct kind of a showman. He can work on those feet and legs. We can work on getting those things into position. But I really thought that he did a nice job of keeping that head and neck in the right position, had that ewe looking really level, and her body looks good. So congratulations to all the young people that came out in our junior showmanship.
Recognizing our contestants out here, in the honor group was Dalton Clampeth of Ohio. 5th place, Abby Parks of Massachusetts. 4th place, Philomena Jaris of Massachusetts. 3rd, Katie Drum of New York. 2nd place, Emily Wilds of Connecticut. And our class winner, Oliver Nicholson of Connecticut. Oliver, we want to remind you, you're going to come back for the finals here in the overall showmanship. Our next class is intermediate division. These are 12 to 15-year-olds. 12 to 15-year-olds. They'll be coming in the ring right now. Again, we want to thank Seidel Equipment for providing the feeders that our class winners get, in addition to the premium money that's mentioned in your premium catalog. And then we want to remind you, after we do senior showmanship, our division winners of each of the 3 divisions will come back and show against each other for an overall champion showman, and a belt buckle will be awarded, provided by the Big E.
Okay, again, we're going to keep these young people down the middle of the ring here, and we're going to excuse the ones on the outside. Let's give them a nice round of applause as they leave the ring. They've done an excellent job. I talked with each one of them a little bit individually. Hopefully they'll come back and try it again. With these in the middle, we're going to work through you some more and try to find the top end of this group. So Again, I hope you'll join me in congratulating these young people in the intermediate showmanship that came out and participated and went back to the pens, and the ones that are still out here. Just a really good set of showmen the whole way through. We get up here in our top end, though. I think there was some of them that kind of drifted to the top in my mind as we went through the show, and it took a little more time so we can talk to some of the other young people. But there's always, never was a time when I looked back at this young man with that ewe-lamb set up that he didn't have her right. Never had her out of position. She cooperated, and that was a long, long time to stay in the position, and he always, I think he's relaxed enough, but yet he keeps enough attention to her. I told some of the young people it's hard to explain, like when you send them back, sometimes that you're just not getting enough out of the sheep. They're not making them looking attentive. They're not keeping that head and neck up out in the right position. They're just letting them relax a little bit too much. He has her relaxed enough, but yet she's always at attention. She always looks really good, set square. You get behind her, she's always set the right width, the right length. He doesn't overstretch. He keeps that top line up level, head up at a 90 degree. I just like the way he does everything about getting that ewe shown. Young lady in second here, I think she does a really nice job. Feet and legs are just not always perfect, but I do like the fact that she is getting a lot out of the front end of that sheep. That sheep is not the best fronted in the world. She has a little more fat. She's a little bolder. She's a little more down fronted comparative to some of the other sheep standing in behind her, but she gets as much as you can out of that sheep for the look that she has, and that's part of what your showmanship is all about, is trying to get that sheep to look as good. I am not that worried about whether that feet and legs are always perfect. Sometimes we can mess with feet and legs so much we forget that the top line and the head and neck set is probably the most important. Sometimes you're better off to leave them close enough and get the most out of your sheep otherwise, and she does that job. Young man coming in here in third, I think probably just lets his sheep relax just a little bit more at times, doesn't get quite as much out of her, and she's a little bit better fronted sheep as an individual than the young ladies in front of her or in front of him, but he lets that top sag ever so slightly. Always has her set up right, though. Correct positioning, never got too worked up. The ewe stood in position the whole time. He had her head up at a 90, just maybe not quite as an attentive, not quite as keeping that top line up quite as level as what the young lady did in front of him. I think that's a nice sheep. It's easy to do. Just get down there and give her a little bit. Give her a little bit more brace in her front. Keep that top line up. Keep that head and neck up at a more of a 90 to give her a little more wake-up call. Sometimes we get these showman sheep so well trained that they just relax a little too much. Young man coming in next in class, I think he was doing a pretty good job, and I guess he did one thing right at the end that I never like to see is would you step behind the ewe. That's one thing that we don't ever want to see in showmanship or in a class. Even if they're small sheep, you get a sheep out in front of you and you step behind them, you can lose control pretty easily. But other than that, he did a really nice job. He's very, very attentive of keeping that head and neck, and he shows her just real smooth. He doesn't get excited about getting her out of position. He'll get her right back into position, set her up, just does a nice job of getting her to relax, because sometimes I think she got a little worked up, but he got her right back into the relaxed mode and get her set up again. He keeps working with her. She isn't probably the easiest one to show. She keeps wanting to move just a little bit for him at times, and that's not to be worried about. You just keep working with her. Keep her calm, and you stay calm, and you'll get a job done. Young man coming in next in the fifth in class, probably that's where he struggles. It's a big old ewe, and he's not quite as big. Doesn't quite get as much out of her. Works on getting those feet and legs into position. Sometimes he gets her a bit overstretched, and sometimes she's underneath of herself just right. So he keeps working at it. He gets the most out of the ewe he can for his size. I think he just struggles a little bit more. The next two young people, I thought they were worth really keeping out here and giving them a good look. The young lady's ewe here in next in line, I think just a fabulous looking ewe. For me, this is just me personally, as a showing them as a breeding sheep, as a market lamb, whatever. I don't like to see the head that far over the shoulders. I like to see a little more forward. Keep her top up just a bit. That sheep is really big, square topped. She does not need to have her top down like that. She looks more level in her hip and pin placement. Looks better in her top if she's level. You don't need to have them that stretched out and that down in her top. The U is really good. She knows how to get one shown. I don't think you want to show something into that U that isn't there. So we need to get that sheep back gathered up, get her top line up on her, keep her head a little more forward. When you push her head back that far, it makes her top go down. The young lady coming in 7th here, again, really nice showman. I just wish she would just keep a little more aggressiveness on those feet and legs. Be more attentive to where your feet and legs are. And when you get in front of her, she looks a little better if you give your hands on both sides of her jaw instead of just one hand. She's not as nice a fronted as some of the other sheep out here. So to get more out of her front end, you get both hands on the sides of her jaw. Give her a little more extension out through that front end. Congratulations.
For our intermediate division in the honor group were Kayla Lippert of New York and Cora Cranston of Rhode Island. In 5th place, William Wilds of New Hampshire. 4th, Cooper O'Keefe of Connecticut. 3rd, Florian Jarris of Massachusetts. 2nd place, Addison Nicholson of Connecticut. And our class winner, Clayton Hesse of Pennsylvania. Clayton, we want to remind you, you'll be coming back at the end for overall showman. Now ready to bring our senior division in. These are our 16 to 21 year olds. 16 to 21 year olds.
again, we're gonna select and keep these few and work through them a little bit. I probably am not gonna go around and talk to each one of the seniors individually. I guess for me, if I feel like if you've gotten to this age and you haven't figured out some of the basics, then maybe there's some things, other things missing. I will mention, I am a big fan of showing down, showing up. I don't care how you show your sheep as long as you get the best out of it. If we're going to get down beside those sheep, we need to look across the top of them and decide, is it straight or not? We're getting down beside these sheep and we're just sitting there, and a lot of these sheep are not up straight in their top line. I'm not really sure why we're down there looking across the top if we're not going to do something about it. So let's do something about that top line. Let's keep them up as straight as we can. That's not make them worse than they actually are by just sitting there and letting them fall apart. Seniors should have that idea in their head. If we're standing up, we should be able to keep those top lines straight on those sheep. To me, I guess that's still the most important part. Head up, top line straight. Feet and legs are always secondary. They'll put themselves into a rather decent position if you just have the head up and the top line level. They're not going to want to stand out of position too far. So maybe get a mirror, work with that at home. You can step back and look into the mirror after you get them set up, decide if it's right. But let's change that. Seniors, I think we can do better with the ones that are gonna exit the ring right now. We'll work with the ones that are out here. Let's put our hands together for those young people. They did a great job, though, and they did come out and compete and put their best effort forward. Really good set of senior showmen here, and I think they've all done a nice job. Let's give them a big round of applause for coming out and competing in this senior class. It's a tough class. There's little tiny things I'm picking at in this top five. I think there's little things, but really to me there was one showman that came out here and probably got the most out of his sheep. It's not the best sheep out here. That ewe lamb doesn't look the best when you get her out on the move. When he gets her stuck and gets her shown, though, she looks like she could be the best one out here. So he gets the most out of his sheep. Very confident about how he's getting it done. I like the fact that he's not overshowing. He's not wrapping her too much. He's not driving her too hard, not too stretched. He's just got her set in the right position, got her head and neck up out. She just doesn't look like he's working that hard to get it done, but he is getting that sheep shown to the fullest extent. So congratulations to him. As we get into second, third, and fourth, I think it gets really close for me in my mind. Little things and personal preference play a lot of into this next few placings. I think the young man in second's probably getting as much out of his sheep also as you can possibly get in the position that he's showing it. I'm not positive showing that sheep down is maybe necessarily the best for the extension of front end. That sheep's good fronted. Is it tall fronted? I think you could make it look a little taller fronted if you got it up on its feet just a little bit more up in that front end. He does a good job. He doesn't stretch it too far. He knows if he does, that sheep's going to post up. So he doesn't show something into the sheep that's not there. He's always working to keep that top line level, trying to keep the lamb relaxed. I think he's doing the most he can do to make that sheep look good, and that's what, to me, showmanship is about, getting the most out of the sheep. Young man coming in third. For me, he gets a lot out of the sheep. Now, is she always in the correct positioning? For me, she's a little long. You've got her stretched just a little farther than she needs to be to look her best. She just looks a little stretched out to me, which makes her look maybe not as massive when you get back off of her. If you collect her just ever so slightly, just an inch or two, bring those back legs up underneath of her just a bit, and maybe not give her quite as hard of a drive. She's dead level all the time. I think you get that head and neck up out as good as you could. Probably wrap her, in my personal opinion, a little bit more than maybe I would like to see. She's got a great front. Show it off. Get around the other side of her. Don't wrap her so much. She needs to be showing that front end because she is really nice fronted. Young man coming in here in fourth, maybe not as confident, I don't feel like, all the time as some of the other young people. Maybe he picks the feet up and tries to fuss with them a little more than maybe need to be. It's a good thing the ewe is super calm. She lets him do it, but he'll pick him up and move him just ever so slightly. Sometimes maybe we don't need to move him. Just got her in a close enough position. You've got the head and neck up out when he gets it done. Really looks good on a profile. She gets a little lax in her top for me. I'd like to see you do something to keep that top line up just a bit to keep her more level. Young lady coming in next in class, I think as we went on, she just kept getting better and better and better. And she was actually listening to some things I was telling some young people, got down beside her sheep, got the most out of the sheep after she started working at it, got that top line up on her, and I think that's a big key. She listened and did some things that really helped out with the look of this ewe, kept her in a balance. When we started out, I don't know if she was getting as much out of her as we went along. She worked on it, got that top line up, got the head and neck up out of that sheep, made her look really nice. Young lady coming next in class, just getting that sheep a little overstretched for me. The ewe looks really good. She doesn't overwork her. She keeps her head up out of the sheep, shows off that fancy head that she's got. Just a nice looking ewe on a profile standpoint. We don't need to stretch her quite so far. That's one thing that the ewe doesn't need. She's plenty long to get her to look good. Young man, it rounds out this group out here. Again, nice job, maybe feet and leg placement. I don't feel like you're getting as much out of that neck and the front end of the head of that sheep as maybe some of the other young people out here. She just looks like she's a little sucked down into her shoulders, not as attractive in the way her neck sets up out of her shoulder. He gets the feet and legs pretty close most of the time and gets a nice drive on her. So congratulations to all these young people.
In that senior division, in our honor group, we had Cody Knoll of New York and Emma Oberholzer of Pennsylvania. Fifth place went to Lexi Grace of New Hampshire. Fourth, Elijah Mariacher, New Hampshire. Third, Brady Brandt, Pennsylvania. Second, Colin Anderson, New York. And first place, and congratulations to Drew George of Michigan in that division.